Welcome to the AI Think Tank podcast, the future of intelligent systems, machine learning, and data science. I'm Dan Wilson, coming to you from Seattle, Washington. Today, my guest is Ritish Chugh, Senior Analytics Engineer at Airbnb. He architects the metric and data governance systems that keep financial data trustworthy across 160 countries. He came up through fraud analytics, embedded systems, and enterprise BI at Amazon. Ritish has a rare gift for making complex data infrastructure make sense. If your AI strategy is ahead of your data strategy, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Ritish. How's it going?
Hey Dan, thanks for having me here.
It's great to have you on, and I know you've got a lot to share today, and just want to get right to it and let you proceed because right now more than ever, data and availability and placement and governance and how we're metering it is coming to a fever pitch because there are so many changes going on in AI and policies and affiliations that are shifting quickly. So you never know where your data is safe, and it's probably best to firmly manage it, right? And so I know you can speak to that today in terms of fabric and other angles of this. Tell us about yourself and your experience getting up here, and I know that you're like me. You've got a hacker mind, so let's talk about that from your early days.
Sure thing. Yeah. I've always been excited about math and science, right? I think right after growing up, like I am. So I grew up in New Delhi, India, and always about passionate about problem solving, puzzles, something that got me excited. And growing up, I took physics major, and I wanted to always explore. And based on that, I tried to go for like engineering. So electronics always excited me. So, and
Mhm.
obviously I like coding. So, and that time I was pretty, wanted to get into like mobile technology. So that's the reason I took electronics and communication engineering. Try to play with microcontrollers, try to really understand how the VLSI really works, how the chip design works.
Mhm.
But something that really got me a lot more excited was, right out of the college, I got a job in consulting, and that's where I understood like as to how business users really make their decisions, how important
Mhm.
data is to them,
Mhm.
and try to understand where they come from and what problems they're looking to solve, and acting like a liaison between them and an engineering team. That's something that got me excited, and I wanted to like dig deeper into it.
Mhm.
So I was looking for different programs. I wanted to like specialize into it, really see like how I can come with like someone who can speak both languages. Someone who can understand, break down business problems, and someone who can really also, talk to engineering and really code it down as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was looking for those as programs, and I couldn't really find something in India to really specialize into, and that's the reason I started looking outside, and I came across this wonderful program at University of Cincinnati for Masters in Analytics and Data Science. It was not even called that back then.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
right,
called as,
right.
yeah, it was
Mhm.
called like mathematical computation or quantitative analytics. There was
Mhm.
no concept of like business analytics back then, right? And they rebranded the program later on, but this is my first stint was looking at like how you can really use the power of data to really come to a way that you can really help influence and make business decisions using forecasting models, using like machine learning and early predictive models and all that sort. So yeah, I think after that, I got a job at payment processing and then back in Cincinnati, and then that's where I started like digging deeper into the fraud and risk analytics. I was managing a portfolio strategy for about 1,000 different banks. Digging deep into data and building their fraud strategies, and about like 900 or about 900 K or about $1 million of fraud losses I was trying to save year over year.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's really got me really excited. And fast forward right now, I work at Airbnb where I lead the entire end-to-end. You know, um, you can say that like reporting and analytics for all our finance business users, where just consider like every time the data moves or probably payment is made on the platform, what different areas it touches to the time, like how accounting is done in the background, and we manage that for about 160 different countries where we are located. So, and then building that infrastructure layer on the top where business leaders can actually, they don't have to do much. You just need to like look at what they're looking at in terms of like, their decision making, and the data is, it's absolutely perfect in terms of the validation checks which are added, and it completely reconciles with all our financial statements as we're issuing out every quarter. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Yeah, well, with your know-how on the back end and working with probably embedded systems to some degree, and programming, is that a granular approach and understanding it at the grit level really helps define your concepts of security and how the ins and outs really work, what is possible. And it's not completely necessary for everyone to have that deep inner view, but sometimes the bird's eye view is shrouded, by a lot of what really is mysterious. And today we can demystify that a little bit and talk about like better approaches to this, because so many people, like, year and a half ago were like, get your data ready for AI. And then we're like, well, get your AI ready for data. But now it's just like, get your data ready for exposure, possible
Yeah.
everything. There's just last year, and it was just again, it really came into so many breaches and problems with different Cloudflare and other leaks and other exploits, to where it's just like I can only imagine what a nightmare that may have been for you, even with a good system, much less people building or migrating into something better. There's a lot of mystery out there, and I want you to really put some energy into that, the approach, and how people should really kind of come into this as new to the perspective, maybe not new to the world of this, but new to the perspectives of like that inner look. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I have a lot of regard for that. So, what can you tell us that you feel like give you like not just the edge, but what is your edge giving you right now in all of this? Do you feel like what is your perspective showing you? What are you seeing is changing right now, even this year?
Yeah, I think I would say in the last couple of years, definitely there has been a lot of emphasis on, in the industry as well, to build out the right infrastructure. A lot of investments going on. All CEO, like CIOs and CEOs, they want to invest in getting the best AI possible. So they're testing out different models, they're talking to different vendors. You're working with the infrastructure teams to really build that infrastructure capability to, talk to different models as well and see what really works best for them, and for their teams. What they're looking for is like obviously more productivity gains. They want to be more efficient in terms of like their deliverables, they ship out better products, they ship out faster. But, at the end of the day, they're also looking to, transform the way they really do their business, right? Whether AI can really help them in like excellent productivity gains in customer service,
Mm-hmm.
or, as well as like looking at the engineering teams, if they can really build faster or build better products, or also looking for metrics to see like how much of their code is really shipped out using AI and how is it really doing in production.
Mm-hmm.
But coming back to this, at the same time, obviously, companies are also investing in AI governance. They also want to make sure that obviously we do all these things and we do all these investments, but we want to make sure that we're doing it sustainably. So there are guardrails around AI. But one missing piece I've seen everywhere, I think not many companies are kind of investing in that, is like laying down the right foundation of AI to really work. So maybe they're jumping ahead of the gun that, okay, they want to, obviously don't lose part in their race and they want to stay ahead of the, curve. But investing in the right foundation is something that, more normal companies are really investing in at the moment. What I mean by it is everything like we do in data, like using AI apps is obviously based on the data, right? If your data is validated, this data is accurate, no matter what tool you're using. If you're using a normal visualization tool, you're writing SQL queries, you're building AI apps, or anything that you do, obviously it's going to be trustworthy. It's going to be accurate, right? Something that ultimately your business users are going to rely on to make their decisions. And that's exactly what they're looking for, right? Now they're looking for more transformative ways that they can themselves go and converse with these tools to really give them the answer rather than relying on any analytics teams to really dig deeper or perform any analysis for them, right? So, so coming back to the idea of like foundational layers is something that your AI can be trained on, and essentially that acts as like a backbone or for the AI system that you use, right? So that is kind of the missing piece that I see in companies these days, where
Mhm.
not enough emphasis is made on this. And this is like, I believe, extremely important at a foundational level of any AI system to get high amount of adoption in the industry. And because that is also the other thing is like, you make these huge investments, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of hesitation in terms of usage of these tools. You don't see that curve of adoption really going up in your teams, right? Whether it's your, immediate organizations or company
Yeah,
wide as a whole. Yeah,
it's tough to prove the metrics of efficacy where
correct.
people aren't exactly participating in an equilateral sense. There's a lot of BS hype out there in all directions. I've seen a lot of studies that are like, oh, it gave us 3% boost in productivity, but it wasn't substantial. And it's just like, well, it's because you guys are just being dull about it. It's like we rented a race car, but we refuse to step on it. You just don't know how to
Yeah,
use it. And a lot of people they don't have enough data to work with to have the insight. Sometimes they have too much and they're behind on it and they're backlogged and they're just really just drowning in it. And it's just a result of quantity over quality, signal to
yeah,
noise. And in all of this, even if you do get it right, you still have to have the right, I don't want to just say guardrails, but the right governance practices. Okay. For example, here in the United States, you can use the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, RMF. It is not a requirement, it is not a standard. You cannot audit it, but it is a list of suggestions based on governing, measuring, managing, metering, all these things to a point where you can apply it in a repeatable way and say, oh, personal identifiable information, PII, we can't do this. And if you bake that into the system of, let's say you have an AI, a GPT or some assistant that you've got, right? And you give it that data and you say, we must build with these standards in mind, or like ISO 42001, you could slip that in there too.
mhm,
Pay the $255 for that book, jam it in there, right? And then everything you do will be in step with your policies if you define them. Now look, this is architectural work, and you'd have to be an absolute idiot to put the roof on first before the foundation. And that's
mhm,
what a lot of people are doing because of the hype. And they think, oh, it'll work. We can see the top of the house, but you haven't even seen the floor yet. You don't even know what that's supposed to look like. And so there's this huge gap in reality, on where companies
yeah,
should be. And the more mature companies have data on their side. They have processes. They have well-defined, more evolved processes and steps and procedures and policies in place. But that doesn't guarantee any efficacy, you know. They'll make it. I mean, something could work half the time and people still use it, right? Look at our
yeah,
current situation. Uh, so like you literally must define that for yourself. And if you can't do that, you have to bring someone in to help you define that. You know,
yeah,
your the whole nest egg in there it has must be protected. There's values assigned to risks and there's people assigned to those responsibilities therein. And when you define that and you're able to navigate the structure that's really there, only then can you see how it really ought to be. Now,
yeah,
one of the things AI has done, a lot of people talk about, oh, it's shaking up a lot of job markets. And aside from AI washing, which is an excuse companies might use to just fire employees anyway,
yeah,
it helps show you what's pointless to begin with. And look at how stupid our processes are. Look at how dumb we've been doing this. It's a workaround. It's like a crutch. And your broken leg is healed, but you still walk with this crutch, right? And like people will never graduate from one level to the next because it's good enough. And then maybe they just don't have the incentives, right? And
yeah,
so when you're a data scientist, and you like what you do, well, then it's profound. It's obvious. And if it's not obvious, you can trace that. You can do discovery to determine the gaps in someone's whole infrastructure, at least their procedures and things. So,
mm,
so there's a lot there. I mean, it's really important what you're bringing to the table here, Ritish. So So what's next? So keep going here.
I think this other thing also I wanted to add is like, I've been in various meetings, and, one question that always comes up, like, especially from the higher execs, like, why do these numbers don't tie together? Very fundamental question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do these numbers from your report differs from what is there in financial statements? Very simple question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple question, but oftentimes, the teams are not able to like answer it properly. It means it's like, oh, we're going to look into it. Like, maybe our processes are different. We're looking at different data sets. Our methodology is different. Our formulas are different.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't use that kind of assumptions. Our maybe calculation
Mm-hmm.
or the way that we define this metric is
Mm-hmm.
different. So that's where it
Yeah.
is really comes down
Mm-hmm.
to. When I
Yeah.
was talking about fun,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're describing creating a federated environment for
Correct.
this. You know what I mean? That this is the powerful next step here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where really the foundation of these fundamental layers or foundational layers for AI to train on really comes through. You cannot have like five different definitions of revenue. So your marketing team looks at revenue in a different way. Your finance team looks at revenue in a different way. Then comes
Mm-hmm.
your sales team, which are recording revenue in a different way. That's the reason like you need to have this metadata where essentially all teams, there's a single definition of all key business metrics that you define, and they
Mm-hmm.
mean the same thing. Now, no matter like what agent you're using regular dashboards, you're using SQL queries, or whatever thing you're using, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to give you the same exact result, and it's repeatable. Even 6 months from now, you're going to go and audit your data, it's going to give you the same result.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change. It's not like any formula that lives in some part of spreadsheet that spins out a certain result, and then no one really knows about it, and because teams kind of operate in silos, they don't really talk to it. And then you add the complexity of geographical differences, right? Teams in
Oh,
Asia,
yeah.
they have their
Yeah.
own way of like looking now, taxes. We Since
Mm-hmm.
we operate in different areas, taxes can get really complicated, even getting down to like jurisdiction level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just consider like, in France, there are like about 20,000 different jurisdictions, right? And getting to like, that level of complexity of taxes requires really, large amount of rigor and baking a large complexity in your code as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's what exactly what I'm talking about, right? Yeah,
Yeah. You have to stay modular. I mean, you're creating it's a like I said, it's a federated data fabric sort of situation where it's heterogeneous, it's mixed. You can only homogenize so much. You can homogenize tools and techniques, algorithms. You cannot homogenize tax code differences,
yeah,
cultural, ways of stating and expressing things, in what order, And so that's a lot to, I mean, you really are that glue language, Ritish. You end up being that translator between the corporate level and the engineering level and the actual like ground floor. And you're orchestrating a better picture for them. You can do this, but
yeah,
it's so profoundly challenging. Even like if anyone out there is listening who does fulfillment or has a shop that does online sales, and you have to do different tax rates for different reasons. Like I'm in Washington, so you are too. So you'd have to charge per county, different
yeah,
tax rates, all these different things. So
right,
in other countries, I can only imagine, And so when it comes to putting it all together and for everybody at the top, that's an engineering feat. No matter even if you have all
absolutely.
the right data, even if you do all the right things, there's still this, oh, does it perform, and so yeah, it's a constant pursuit, I'm sure, for you to fine tune this.
No, definitely it is, Dan.
Hmm.
And at the top of it is also like, really, bringing people to the same like page, really, to make them understand like, hey, why is investing in the long-term approach like this is important, right? Why do
Hmm.
we have these practices in place where we have, single definition of metric all across the board, and teams agreeing to it, and at the same time going back to the idea of governance means like team who define a metric, they have a collective responsibility of also owning that metric, meaning all the data sets that lies upstream and downstream of those metrics, teams are responsible for ownership and maintenance. No formulas and nothing that just go ahead and change it, it goes through a formal CI, like a formal code approval approaches where it is trackable. You can always go back and refer to it, who changed it, when it got changed, why
Mm-hmm.
is the reason got changed. So you have
Right.
an entire
Mhm.
paper audit trail,
Provenance. Mm-hmm.
because especially in a
Yeah.
core company who deals with a lot of like regulators, it is extremely important to maintain that audit
Mm-hmm.
trail, right?
Yeah,
Um,
you can automatically just generate that from a system that has it baked in. You put it in
exactly.
at the very foundational level, and beyond that, as long as you're sure about it, then there it is. It's almost like CSS. You can really switch out code, right? You could switch out, you could make an addendum to something, and then it would propagate across the whole system. You would see where you need
Yeah.
to make changes and addendums to other policies. But um, this is again, I don't. I talk to a lot of people, but I never meet anyone who really has this much complex moving parts. Okay, to the system. So man, like you really have your work cut out for you. So what's so what do you see as the next step then from here? What should people focus on from what your point in this
Yeah.
governance? Where is it hitting the rubber hitting the road, you think?
Absolutely. So once the consensus is defined, once the key business metrics are
Hmm.
defined, then comes the idea of like this foundational glue or semantic layer, which really transforms or acts as a bridge between your, let's say, data schemas and your
Hmm.
business metrics. It is
Right.
kind of, you can consider that as like a translator. So it
Hmm.
knows what data lies underneath. It knows what your metrics are, and how you really define them.
Hmm.
Now it's just a matter of like acting like a foundational glue between them that can speak the language.
Right.
So,
Right.
right. So you have your metadata defined, you have your semantic layer defined,
Hmm.
and the semantic layer lives as part of your infrastructure. It is not downstream
Right.
of your infrastructure. And then, it hits into snags, and then you have to go ahead and like kind of transform that. It is just lives as part of your infrastructure.
Hmm.
Um, and this is what ties everything together. No matter what tool you're using after that, right, is going to give you the same exact result. So, for example, I've tried this with our existing dashboards. I've tried this with
Mm.
our existing, like, writing some raw SQL queries. And now, like, using that as part of like a foundational AI model, it is fundamental. It's like life changing. Um, you know, Leaders are now asking for like how they can really use conversational AI to really get to know about their data. So this is like the fundamental thing that comes into mind where,
Right.
you know, uh, we can use all these agents in natural language and get the same exact output, and then can spin up a dashboard. It can,
Hmm.
write queries for you, or probably like write a report, generate like a
Hmm.
PowerPoint presentation, going from there. So the opportunities are endless
Yeah,
over
you
here.
need to qualify data so it's sanctioned to use, and it must meet rigor. And if you don't, exercise due diligence in that pipeline, who cares about what comes out of the other end? It won't matter. It'll be
Yeah,
half right, half the time, whatever. And people get the inconsistencies. It's just like I build systems that are model agnostic. You could change the model out to something local and small, and it works as big and good as a big foundational model. Imagine that. And so mathematical optimization approaches in different architecture, just evolved approaches in general with math are really key right now.
yeah,
A lot of people are up in arms, and they should be, about the senseless misuse of environmental resources that we all need, like water and electricity. And there's certainly a hype wave to that. There's a reality wave to that as well, because I have friends that are directly affected by those energy costs, okay, by data centers. But it's time for people to stop the madness and wake up and start exercising a more optimal, integral approach. And what you're doing is very symbiotic. You are that glue. It's just like the mycelium network connecting between nutrient points and finding the shortest routes. And I mean, beyond building the system right and safe, you also have performance to look at. Can you speak to the what is it like to manage such a large web of heterogeneous, nodes
yeah.
of operation? I mean, do you have any reflections on that you'd like to share, or?
Yeah, I think I think the fundamental way that we are tracking it is in terms of adoption, right?
Mm.
When a leadership doesn't have trust in the data, that is where everything falls apart. No matter like
Mm-hmm.
what best in class models
Yep.
and tools and
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure you use, you invest millions of
Right.
dollars in that. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it really comes down to, can I trust this data or not? What
Yeah.
kind of validation framework you're using to really validate this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how far back does it go in terms of reconciling all this
Mm-hmm.
information together?
Right.
So coming back to the same, point that I made earlier, that in meetings where folks were talking about why is there inconsistency in data and why our data AI adoption is not scaling as fast, is because of this not having enough trust in the data,
Mm-hmm.
not having trust in the system, right?
Mm-hmm. Integrity.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly,
It's
it's a
such a big
fundamental
deal.
integrity issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Even if you pay for the best of the models, they're
Yeah,
going to eventually drift in a single conversation. So people using LLMs directly are doing it wrong to begin with, and you need an agent system with long-term memory and the ability to tool call so you can grep independent lines and actually verify data and put it to the screen, not this generating stuff. Okay.
yeah,
It's a mule. And so when I build systems, the car is what I'm building. The engine is what I can change out. And it doesn't matter what engine goes in, oddly enough, it works the same way each time consistently and within lines of my governance systems. And so it's a matter of approach. It's just a philosophy of practical application, not one of dreamy idealism. Okay, this is grit.
yeah,
So when you build an architect a system like this from where you're at, because remember it's evolved. It's not like, hey, let's create Airbnb or some other XYZ company from scratch and let's do all these things. No, things evolve to where they're at. And when you reach a certain point, you're like, let's assess everything and see if we don't need to like kind of adjust this a little bit, right? And that's when things either fall apart or start to make sense or both. And if you could have all the data in the world and it could be good, but if you don't know how to use it, and you could know how to use it, but have like weird inconsistencies, okay, that's an
yeah,
issue. So here's what I found, and you could tell me what you think, okay? Knowledge
sure.
graphs. Okay. Provenance tracking. The ability to know why a change happened or where someone did something else, proper logging, thorough logging can
Mhm.
mitigate a lot of problems and inconsistencies to begin with. But even if you log it, you still have to aggregate that, on the large so that any methods or techniques are being shared across that whole platform that makes sense. Like, hey, we're not using that old formula anymore because it doesn't take into account these other factors that we are now deriving as valuable, in this equation. So data and how you manage it evolves with your needs, even if you have a good system. But dragging people to that finish line isn't what it is. It's dragging that it's getting whatever someone inherited, whatever data systems are already set up, whatever you've got to like fix,
Yeah,
migrate, or what have you, or re-architect. That's if you get to do that, then you that's key, right? If you get to, but then a lot of times I know people who have to just deal with what they've got and they can't change it so much. They only can change a few things on the exterior, right? You're in
yeah,
a place where you can really affect change though. It's pivotal,
yeah,
and so I think that's really, I hope people gain some feel more comfortable going forward that
yeah.
it can be understood. How are you metering things? What's your take on metering all this and saying, well, this is this is our base. We think this is how healthy
Yeah.
interchange. This is what it should look like. This is how much it should cost doing this. What do you have there?
So essentially, what I think about is like it's also like what productivity gains you're trying to see, right? For
Hmm.
example, uh, let's say we are enabling AI systems in customer service, right? Like how much really it helps them in terms of like really taking care of the volume of the calls they normally get, right? And
Hmm.
how effectively they are really able to get that result. It's not that like, they're able to just get through it for the sake of it and then they try to close these tickets as
Hmm.
fast as possible.
Hmm.
But does the customer retention look the same even after when this AI system was brought into effect, right? Do our customers kind of interact in the same way, or do we see like a lot of PR related to like, hey, this is BS, and then
Right,
we're
right.
not getting the enough
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
real human support that we used to get earlier, and then our issues
Hmm.
are not ever getting resolved. So in
Hmm.
terms of metric, or in terms of metering, I think no matter where AI is integrated, be your customer service, be your, let's say, engineering, in terms of code writing, in terms of
Yeah.
analytics, or in terms of finance. It really comes down to the idea of, is it able to solve the problem that you kind of intended it to do, right? Is it doing better than was to be done before, right? It
Hmm.
does it go through all the inconsistencies you were seeing earlier, and does it provide kind of a lift in terms of like in a better way to do the same thing, right?
Hmm. Right. Right.
So your productivity gains go up. You can do more. You can take up more, right? In terms of the kind of work you do what we're
Hmm.
doing, and you can deliver more. You can ship products faster. So all these things kind of add up in terms of like overall gains for the company. That is probably one of the ways that we are looking at in the system right now as a whole um, at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough thing, because we want. I think the cool thing about having a real chat bot, not like a pre-filled one, but whatever works, as like someone has on their website, there's, ask us questions, whatever, is when you can't find a multiple choice for yourself, you have to just say whatever limited knowledge you have, right? And say it in your words and like, oh, maybe you mean this, and it defines it for you, and that helps, right?
Yeah,
But then if it can't escalate to a human when it matters, or if it can't give me links that matter, if it's not doing fulfilling even the basics, then it's a distraction and it goes against customer service. It's like
yeah,
y'all just wasted 20 minutes of mine trying to do this, and you know what I mean? I've seen situations like this. So,
yeah,
but with a system that's really pivots on that, because you can't just rent and, time and a place and then people and liabilities and all this and different regulations and, taxes and whatnot, and policies are different in different places, of course. So that is a lot to normalize
yeah.
across the board, right? And it just, what a differential equation you wake up to every day.
Yeah, I probably don't
Yeah.
want that.
Mm,
So yeah, I think
incredible. Yeah.
that's what makes it really interesting. I think
Hmm.
there is a very strong proponent of human in the loop, which I can see should be there for the foreseeable future because it is not completely hands up. You cannot just, turn it on and let it do its thing. I think
Hmm.
it's important to, especially in areas of high amount of,
Hmm.
regulations,
Hmm.
there is a requirement of human in the loop. But
Explain for the human in the loop that has to bump up against this metadata. Explain the
yeah,
nature of the metadata. Does it relate to the knowledge graphing I was talking about, where it's like, oh, we
exactly.
can see, thank you, this is it. I want more people to hear about this. So I know we were talking earlier the other day about uh, we say data fabric, but what that really means, and then also where the metadata really lives in the system, so people have an idea of where it is. A lot of this is a very
Yeah,
obscure, amorphous, area. You can't look at it like a car and go, "That's how much of capacity it is. That's how much gas mileage it has. It'll hold
yeah,
four. We can go there and we can come back with a load in the trunk this much, but not much more." People cannot look at these systems like that. Even with flowcharts, it can be a little daunting. And the concept is beyond the visual sometimes. You really just have to like find an analogy in real life, right, to anchor into. But I know I had a list over here of some things, but like why AI breaks without metrics, why AI breaks without semantics and metadata is not just the risk of hallucination, but just data delivery. Even if you have a perfect AI, if you can't like route the proper data and sort and go, oh, wait, there was an update to this. Now we're using this. And provenance log tracking states that XYZ,
yeah,
however you manage, And so this is, you're building trust, but you're actually building like real integrity, like accurate data before trust. You have to.
yeah.
So,
I think that is I would say the main way you can see more trust in terms of adoption. You can see more folks using it and
mhm,
propagating that. You can see your investment really coming to life, right?
mhm,
Whatever investments are being done in the industry and in
mhm,
the company itself in terms of getting people up to speed with using AI, you can see all of that coming together as and when the companies invest in this foundational data layer or
mhm,
semantics to have that foundation because now you have established trust. Now you can see integrity in your numbers, and you can
Mm-hmm.
see, you can get confident. Now you can really, take that to the leadership and really talk about in terms of like, yes, I think we have that foundational data layer set up. We have trust in the data, and now we can take it to the next level in terms of like how we can utilize it for informed decision making. I think
Yeah.
that is where we want to utilize AI and its maximize its power for,
Right.
is the informed decision making.
Yeah. This comes back to my friend Bill Kennedy wrote the 80/20 CEO and from Panic to Profit and does all this great stuff. And he's great. And he says this about managing, all of this in business. If you're making decisions based on, and 20% of your decisions are based on data, you don't have enough data. If you're making 80% of your decisions are based on data, you have too much and you're backlogged, right? And so there's this
Yes.
sweet spot where you need to just, there is a place you can feel comfortable, right around 60%, right? Somewhere in there, where you can feel like you're not, you can see the conveyor belt of stuff coming down the line to you and you can see what you've got to go out, and really just minimizing those bottlenecks. I think that timing matters a lot. I think that aggregation, lag, affects things at some point. We think about, oh, it just works. Here's a shiny label on this product and this name we can trust or whatever, whoever it is, vector database, hybrid storage, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you find out they're just a barrel of monkeys and everybody's just doing their best to look like it works. It does, but there's always weak points. And so I know you probably do tons of gap analysis in all of these
Yeah.
pursuits, and that's like a lot of what I do too. And but to educate people and bring them to the water, it's like, can we find analogies to bring it down to earth for people and say, well, it's just like a phone network, except, or it's just like this. But there comes a point where there's no analogy, right? It's just such a weird animal, what we deal with sometimes. So some of the concepts that are lighter that you carried today are pretty good, which is just, hey, let's keep up with what changed and let's make sure everybody gets it, but make sure it doesn't devolve in the course of getting there, or it doesn't become skewed, or it doesn't become a matter of drift or hallucination later. Are there any agent systems or anything that you can talk about that you're able to talk about that you've seen operate in a positive light in regards to all this, or any kind of like, I'm not asking for your special sauce, but what's working that you are seeing right now? Or what approaches and AI do you think are really helping? What's giving you leverage?
I think one of the things that's working is, being able to invest in like fundamental data, I would say fabric, uh, to be able to kind of stitch it all across and make it uniform across the company. I think that
Mm-hmm.
was something that was the long-term approach,
Mm-hmm.
and always been the case. And having that kind of properly set up, having like, proper, again, going back to the idea of like governance, where, each organization and team don't operate in silos. They are actually able to really synchronize on common understanding of a fundamental metric. So essentially, now it doesn't really happen that your numbers don't talk to each other. It's not that, revenue or some other metric has five different definitions. Everyone is on the same page when you talk about a certain metric because it is democratized.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, like, it's all part of the metadata. It lives over there. It is recorded over there. All changes to it are recorded over there, right? There is a paper trail of proper maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Every team has responsibility of like, ownership end to end as to how they're gonna take care of a certain metric or anything that's related to it, right? And just factoring this, like maybe aggregating everything all together, having that part of the fundamental layer is what brings it and democratizes it to the entire company,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Now, whatever you build on it and whatever you take from there is just based on your imagination, essentially, because you have this foundational layer that you have extensively validated that doesn't just work on one localized area, it is global, right? So let's say a person who's trying to get this information in the US versus someone other analyst, let's say, trying to get that same information in Singapore, and similarly in Australia, they're going to get the same level of metrics or the same validation framework and the same kind of value of the same metric all across the board. So it is not fragmented, right? From that standpoint, it is very uniform. And that's where I've seen companies save a lot of time in not reconciling like this reports all across different geographies because your methodology doesn't quite add up. It is the same thing all across, right?
Hmm.
So going back to the point where you invested a lot of time in like stitching this fabric, bringing it all together, democratizing it all across the board, establishing ownership, establishing governance, and now you can really reap the fruits. You can
Hmm.
now where the actual game starts of
Hmm.
building agentic systems to really
Yeah,
push the boundaries.
there's no sense in having an automated process that just makes mistakes faster.
Yeah,
It's really important to graduate your systems and graduate and qualify your single processes as any workflow because you're going to find out that it'll do really great until it doesn't. And when you find out, it won't be the way you want to find out. It won't be in hobby time. It'll be on someone's dime, and it could be on someone's identity and a breach and other things. And so the governance is really key. And but governance can provide that fast track to the right data. The right governance,
yeah,
it's efficient, it makes sense, it's sensible, it's enforceable, and it's and not just at the policy level, but like at all policy levels and the functional switch level, to where your pipeline is very it's thorough and efficient, and at no point are you rung jumping any other data, like your
yeah,
aggregation must be global, at this point, or for what it's worth, regionally speaking, but at the very
exactly.
top, it must. So normalizing this, there's a science to it, and this is key. And companies that need help with this need to find people who have this hardy spirit for it, because this isn't some thing I don't think people ever dream of going to school to do. It's hardy work. There's no there you gain certain skills and find yourself really useful in some weird things in life. Sometimes you're like, man, I never thought I'd be doing this and that, but wow, this is
Yeah.
really, people need it. And you have this insight that it's reachable, it's teachable. Is this something that you teach people at all, or is this something that do you often write about this? Because you should if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have. I do write about it. I've written a
Mm-hmm.
few blogs. I've written some high volume articles,
Mm-hmm.
and they're part of like you can find these on Hacker Noon. I've
Oh
written
yeah.
some
Okay.
articles on
Cool.
society that I'm part of, like the
Mm-hmm.
Informed Society, where Society for Operational Research and Information Systems.
Mm-hmm.
I've also written journals and articles, as well as done a lot of peer reviews on various research that is being conducted on data as well as foundation layers. So yeah, I'm heavily involved and very passionate about the subject,
Mm-hmm.
and I continue to share my ideas through podcasts or probably like through
Mm-hmm.
articles, and then just trying to get the word out as to this is life changing. This is something that
Mm-hmm.
companies should definitely think about implementing in their framework.
Yeah, it's just your ability to strategically plan in such a what can be obscure or really daunting, tedious environment is key for any company success. Like, you're rare, man. And I guess through the leadership lens, as we say, you want a return on investment. Ultimately, you don't want liability. Ultimately, you want happy customers, and you can get all this with the due diligence. And this isn't some guesswork until you're trying to figure out or troubleshoot, why is this not aggregating? And that's, there's some detective work to be done there. But
Yeah,
discovery and planning and the strategy behind this and what you find in the gaps and how you address it are completely in broad daylight and approachable. This is not some mystical thing, and so I know some takeaways here, basically, that, like, if you want trust, you have to engineer it first. You can't just build it last in a system, and it's not an afterthought.
yeah,
And metadata is a big part of it. Semantics are what really help provide that value at the end, and along the way, sew it together. But you'll never have the autonomy without it. And that's what people are so hot for, right? Yeah, like,
Right.
let's do this. Uh, the leadership responsibility falls on those who own the process, and who is liable for that. I know in my talks that I've had to give and helping companies understand what are the risks are and where the crown jewels must be protected. And you'll find in just walking through that, you'll find the weak links. You'll find where, oh, well, you guys have been winging it here. You never really were using data. You were using someone else's assumption about how data worked. How about
Yeah.
that? Hearsay. So data foundations, I know you were saying that AI success is rooted in that. And I say that's an integrity, and you need that. But this responsibility is something that is shared, but also, again, falls within certain domains, okay,
Mm.
within a company. And it should, because those are your SMEs. Those are the people that would know exactly how that would do best. And the people that data
Yeah.
scientists should work along with to make sure that these, methodologies, and other approaches are actually sound and help
Mhm.
discover the new, feature discovery and what data is there. Um, so I just, I think again, we're still at the beginning of the year. It's time people really start investing and thinking about this. If anything, just look at where the pain points are in your systems, and what pain points are the most important: reliability and losing customers.
Yeah.
There's others, but I'm just saying, like on the large, that's business. So, yeah, are there any books that you've written or anything else would you like to share, where we can read further any of your writings?
Yeah, absolutely. So I continue to write on Hackernode. I think written like quite a lot of articles really talking about like what conversation analytics is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how the landscape of analytics is really transforming as we see is in industry, right? Going
Mm-hmm.
from traditional dashboards or SQL writing to like conversational AI, right? Where you can
Mm-hmm.
pretty much query the system or ask about your data in
Mm-hmm.
natural language, right?
Yeah,
And that is
that's
the
right.
need of the hour, pretty much. And then
Mm-hmm.
again, going back to the idea of how does that really come together is your strong data foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Right. Well,
Uh,
yeah, it connects people who don't necessarily have all the jargon and tech speak to just say, hey, and ask a simple question and get a technical and intelligent answer.
yeah.
Even no matter like it's about breaking down the gate and not gatekeeping. It's about equity, equality, and communication, and allowing different departments to engage on something technical without having to be specialists themselves, but to know just enough to know what they don't know. And here, it's a fire we can all get around. You know what I mean? We can all meet around this.
Yeah.
But again, it's so important. Look, Ritish, I appreciate your time today. Is there any kind of closing thoughts or words you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. It's
Hmm.
definitely a great discussion. And I'm really excited how AI is transforming and what benefits it can add. And then, data is actually a fundamental fuel of powering all these AI systems. I think the only closing thought that I have is you know it's very important to like invest. I mean, it's there important to invest in the right tools, but without the right data foundation and without the right kind of set of like governance, it's kind of hard to move across boundaries and really create the trust and create adoption of these AI tools in the society. So that's the last thought I want to leave your viewers with.
Hmm.
And hope to see you back very soon.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, a good legacy of wisdom that you're leaving everybody here. Well, thanks again, and I look forward to what you build next because I'm sure we're going to talk again not too long and catch up. And hey, we're neighbors, right? So, but
Yeah.
anyways, it's been a pleasure, and I just want people out there to realize and understand this is approachable. This is something that you can measure, manage, and mandate. You know what really needs to happen, and it doesn't have to be mysterious. You don't have to be an AI, pro or anything, but if you could just be a critical thinker, that's almost all it takes. And just don't
Yes.
believe the hype and then really listen to the thoughtful, calm people who are talking and and stay away from again like a lot of what really just turns out to be a hollow promise, and a lot of fluff out there. So a lot of good people making efforts out there to help people bring it together and bridge those gaps, and you're one of them, Ritish. And so I thank you so much for coming on the
Okay.
show. This is Dan Wilson here, Ritish Chugh, AI Think Tank podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody have a wonderful weekend and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.